y'all doing over there?
What's up, man?
Awesome. How you doing?
We're good. You're a little moody over there. Wait, let me close my window.
We're in Portland, that's why. Fun.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
Shit, look at that.
You and
Match,
Frankie.
you
What's
gotta
up,
match
man?
that vibe.
Yeah, right.
Totally.
I'm Aaron.
Nice to meet you, Aaron.
Nice to meet you too,
And
Marcel.
I'm Mel Marcel. So nice to meet you. And I love your studio backdrop room, whatever it is.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is actually, it's a very tiny room that I work in. So it's like all the crap goes on this side and this is all, curated chaos.
Right on, man. Hey, I really appreciate you doing this with us, dude. I see how busy you are and how much you work, so I appreciate you giving us some of your time, brother.
Yeah, no problem, man. I'm into it.
Yeah, for everybody that's out there, why don't you introduce yourself to them?
Yeah, of course. My name's Marcel. I run the Lessons with Marcel media conglomerate. We do a YouTube channel. We got the website where we sell tabs, and we just started a podcast. But mostly I teach bluegrass guitar. I do a little bit of telly stuff, a little bit of country stuff, but it's really about bringing bluegrass to another generation.
It's really amazing what you're doing, dude. I actually got on the train kind of during the pandemic, working from home, and I've been picking for a couple of years now. Like, I've been playing guitar my whole life, but seriously, like, trying to learn how to play bluegrass for a couple of years. And I found you during the pandemic, and what really struck me about what you do immediately was the approachability of it. It was so easy to understand. You weren't like killing it with a whole bunch of jargon. You were making it really easy for me to understand and jump into. And I just appreciate that. First of all, thank you, man, because it's learning bluegrass is a daunting task.
It is.
So to have somebody
It's
that's
supposed to be fun.
you're doing it too. Tell me it's not daunting.
Yeah.
So I just appreciated that, man. And I'm curious, Marcel, like, how did the channel start and what made you want to do that in the first place?
Yeah, man. I always I'll take it way back.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I always wanted to be a music teacher. I wanted to teach like middle school band. That was my thing. And I thought that would be just such a cool, fun job. And I had a really hard time trying to get into any kind of music school. I couldn't get into like a university, into higher education. And a lot of that had to do with my hearing loss. If you guys didn't know, I wear hearing aids. I've worn them since I was a little kid.
No, I didn't know that.
And yeah, there's kind of a genetic abnormality. It's called otosclerosis, and it runs in all the men in my family. And so some of our like inner ear bones, they freeze up. They sort of have abnormal bone growth, and they don't vibrate as well.
Okay.
And so yeah, I've worn hearing aids since I was 6. It made the audition process really difficult. There were some things they wanted me to do that I couldn't do. I still can't do, or I couldn't do at the time. And so I I didn't get in.
Oh.
And then I called my friends and I was like, all right, I got $20. Tell me everything that you learned today in school.
Oh shit.
And
By
yeah,
proxy.
so yeah, exactly. I got my music education secondhand from all my buddies that did make it in. And yeah, dude, maybe like 6 months later, that same school, the one I was really trying to get into, called me and they were like, hey, we need musicians to be in the pit for this production of Rent. And we're paying you, however many thousands of dollars. It was a good chunk of change. You'll be performing to 1,200 people, Thursday through Sunday. Can you take it? And I realized like, oh, all my friends are paying to go to this school, and this school is paying me to show up. And so that's how I made money for a long time, was in musicals. And of course, alongside that, I was just working on bluegrass all the time. It was the thing that I really cared about. And yeah, eventually people started asking me for lessons. And guess what we put on the first poster? It said Lessons with Marcel. And so then, you're going to make a website. What do you call the website? I guess we call it Lessons with Marcel. Yeah. And someone was like, oh, you should make a YouTube video. You know, I made a YouTube video, and like 6 months later, it had 1,000 views. And I was, you know, kind of shocked that someone found something that I made so useful. Like,
Mhm.
well, you know, maybe I'll put some time into making more of these. And yeah, eventually it just kind of took off.
Wow. That's crazy, man. That first of all, let's go back to the hearing loss thing. Like,
Yeah, sure.
Can't even like. Well, I guess what one would think like, oh, you have hearing loss, you can't do music, just like the school, like kind of turn you down, like, oh, okay, you can't do this. But then for them to come back and want to pay you, what was that feeling like?
Yeah, that was an insane feeling. The hearing loss, you know, just, you know, for anyone who's interested, I guess it is a low frequency loss. So a lot of the things that that I can't hear, have trouble perceiving, are like the upright bass, for instance. And I used to gig on that quite a bit, and it's not an instrument that I can truly hear. I hear like the thunk of the
wow.
strings, but I don't like hear the pitch.
Okay.
Uh, so I'm sure my upright bass playing was always a little bit out of tune, but it was close enough for people to hire me.
So when you're playing upright bass, are you playing by feeling then 100%?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's nice because it's a giant box and you're hugging it. It vibrates against your whole body. So if you are remarkably out of tune, you can feel it. Um, I know that sounds a little cheesy, but it's true. You can just
No.
feel that you're out of tune because the vibrations don't match.
It- the thing that gets me about that, Marcel, is like bluegrass at its core is playing with other people and, you know, picking with each other. And so has it posed really unique challenges for you in picking situations, you know, when you get together with other people?
Yeah, it definitely has. You know, like you know, when I was a kid in school, it's something that would happen a lot. Would you know, the teacher would be talking to us, and then she'd turn to face the board, and she'd
Mm-hmm.
keep talking. Suddenly, I can't see her mouth. I can't lip read, and the sound's going away from me, and I would just, you know, lose the ball. Right? If you're not facing me, if you're not communicating with me directly, it's hard to follow. And that same thing happens at jams. Sometimes people face away, or the way the stage is set up, you can't get a clear eye line. And I do a lot of my jamming, you know, almost visually. If I'm not getting enough feedback from the monitors, or if it's a jam and I can't hear very well in the room, you know, I'm looking at the mandolin player's hands, you know, and I'm seeing where the upbeat is, or I'm looking at the bass player's hands and I'm seeing where the downbeat is. And if I don't have a clear eye line, yeah, it's a mess.
Wow, that's such a trip. I
So you've like established an entire new way of listening and learning music
Yeah.
then due to your what you've had to overcome.
You know, there's other people that have done similar things. And you know, when I was really young, I saw a percussionist named Evelyn Glennie, and I can't remember. I want to say she's Irish or Scottish or something, but she was doing a tour of the U.S. and my parents took me to see her, and I got to talk to her for a second, and she dealt with a lot of the same struggles. And yeah, she's a professional percussionist, and she can't hear very well either. And you know, lucky for her, she a lot of times gets a conductor, right? She gets someone who's dictating time in front of her.
Okay.
And I do the same thing, right? When I'm looking at people's hands, they're dictating the time for me like a conductor would.
Wow. That's
Wow.
such a trip,
That
man.
is so like you learned this as you were younger, right? Because it was something in your family, or like is this something that you were, you realized when you were older?
Well, you know, my parents didn't realize right away because, you know, my father was told that there's a 50% chance that it gets passed on, and my older brother didn't get it. And when I was younger, you know, they started noticing that like they would call me from another room or something, and I wouldn't respond.
Yeah.
Um, and I was always a real independent little kid, and I think that was part of it. Was you know, I was nervous about getting into conversations because I didn't know if I could hang, right? If
Yeah.
I could like interact and hold on. So it wasn't until I was 6 years old until I got hearing aids. And that's the first time I heard like birds. You know, it's the first time I heard a bunch of stuff.
Holy shit, dude.
So what was that like?
Oh my
A,
God.
a little
I know we're
adorable.
supposed to talk about bluegrass, but this is great,
We're
man.
gonna get there. But like a sweet, adorable little 6-year-old, and then you can finally hear birds. How does that impact you? And like you're clearly love sound. So how did that kind of like, I don't know, just getting those hearing aids, how did that, change your world.
That was wild. I realized a lot when I was young. I realized that there were um that I had some like speech trouble, and my mom would sit with me and like say words over and over again so that way, I would have a closer pronunciation. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have, any kind of lisp or anything, which is wonderful. Thank God that happened. But yeah, I think that the strongest memory I have from that time period is my mom. When she found out, my mom cried when she found out I had the hearing loss.
Oh.
And my my reaction was I was excited. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be like dad. I'm gonna get hearing
Oh.
aids. And I
Oh.
remember it being a very strange moment where I didn't really conceive what was going on.
What
You
the fuck?
know, that is so sweet. That it's no, it's so sweet. It reminds me of something that happened in our family with, like, in a completely opposite way, but like kids wanting to be like their parents, whether they're perfect or not. Like they don't
Yeah,
understand that. They're just like, I want to be like my
yeah,
mom, my dad, whatever. And so that to me, just what a sweet thought. And kudos to mom for sitting there and taking the time instead of like pushing it on someone else, because I know a lot of parents, like, that's very hard, and they get scared. You don't know what to do, so you want to leave them to a professional, and not realize how important it can be for you to just sit with your baby and like
yeah.
kind of teach. And just one other thing on your voice, like, your voice is so soothing and
Mhm.
very calming, and it really is part of what helps at least me to understand what you're talking about, like the delivery
Mhm.
and the way that it's said, not necessarily the jargon that's coming out,
Have you heard that
Right, right.
before?
No, I don't get that comment very often, but I appreciate that.
Yeah, I would say the exact
Yeah.
same thing. Like it's so like done with such care. You know what I mean? Like it seems very intentional, and it's almost lighthearted, like it's almost a joke, but it's not. And that's the thing that like drew me in. I was like, wow, this guy's laying it down in a way that like I can just sit here and learn. I'm not like, it's not a anxiety thing, because I don't know if you were like this, but learning guitar was a very like anxious thing for me. Was it like that for you?
Really?
Yeah.
No, learning guitar for me was um it was like the anti-work. If I had to do anything, I would just play guitar instead. And I started by playing drums. My dad was a drummer too.
Okay.
And so when I was young, I started playing drums. We took from this jazz guy. His name was Mel Zelnick, and he played with a bunch of legends. He played with like Ray Charles, he played with Patti
Oh
Page, he
shit.
played with a bunch of famous people. And he was living in the middle of the desert. We'd go hang out with him. And yeah, big influence right there. And at the time, my brother had just broken up with his girlfriend, and
Hmm?
he decided he was going to play the guitar.
Uh-oh.
And so yeah, so at our house there was, now a guitar hanging around, and when my brother would, play his video games or whatever, would be otherwise occupied,
Uh-huh.
I would go grab his guitar and I try to recreate things that I've seen him doing. And of course we were printing out guitar tabs and stuff like that.
Right.
And yeah, it became kind of an obsession. And I think the turning point was when my brother went to college and he came back for, winter break or whatever.
Mhm.
And I think I had excelled as a guitar player sort of past where he was. And he was like, why don't you have the family guitar?
Oh
Oh,
shit.
Yeah.
that's so sweet. How many years difference is it for you and your brother?
Like 5 years. Yeah.
5 years. So that's a good. You're the youngest?
I am. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the two of us.
Yeah.
So has it always been bluegrass, Marcel?
No, no, it hasn't been at all. I found bluegrass maybe when I was 19 or 20, and I kind of got obsessed with it really quick. I was living with a bunch of rockabilly kids, and everyone had, the pompadour and the leather jacket, or the
Mhm.
jean vest, all that stuff, right? And they were real music snobs, which I loved them for. And there was sort of this like constant, constant throwback where it was like, oh, you like, Hound Dog? Well, you should go listen to, Big Mama Thornton sing Hound Dog. Like, oh, you don't even know the version from 20 years earlier, right?
Right.
And yeah, eventually one of them was like, oh, you should dig back into bluegrass, pushed it back that far, like go listen to Bill Monroe. And I completely legally, in no illegal way at all, downloaded a giant pack of bluegrass jam tunes. It was like 100 bluegrass jam standards, right?
Uh-huh.
And I started listening to them, and I was like, oh, this is interesting because all these songs are about like wanting to go back to the farm, and I grew up on a farm, on a family farm. I was
Oh
like,
shit.
every single one of these songs isn't about how great it is here right now on the farm. Every one of these songs is like, I wish I could go back. And that really resonated with me. I was like, oh, I want to sing these songs. So I take my playlist and I start, moving over all of my, favorite songs into like another folder. And I remember one of them was like Skaggs and Rice, Bury Me Beneath the Willow,
Oh,
Bluegrass Album Band, Your Love Is Like a Flower, bunch of just classic tunes. And so I start looking up these bands. I'm like, tell me more about these bands. And I realized that every track that I've moved over, almost every track that I moved over, is a band with Tony Rice in it. And so I'm like, all right, who's Tony Rice? And I'm like, oh, he's a guitar player. I'm a guitar player. And then I'm listening to the songs and I'm hearing the guitar solos and I'm like, oh man, I don't know how to play guitar solos. I guess if I want to sing these songs, I have to learn how to play lead guitar. And that's what happened when I was like 19 years old. That was like the mental conversion.
that I love that, man, because there's something to be said for that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Like gumption to not, because for, like I said, for me, I've been playing since I was 12.
Courage.
I'm 51,
too.
right? And just within the last 2 years, I feel like I got serious about playing my guitar. And like I said, it was always like an anxious thing for me. Like I wanted to be better. And so learning was difficult, right? And when I would see people that could really play, it wasn't inspiring, it was discouraging. Do you get, I was like,
Right,
fuck,
right.
I'll never be able to do that. Well, I might as well not even bother. And to have that mindset of like, oh shit, I see that and I want to be able to do that. And I'm going to take the time and do what it takes to be able to get to that level. That's something like brand new for me. So to be able to have that at 19
It's courageous.
is courageous. Yeah.
That's
for
the
real.
word.
Yeah, it was a bold choice. And actually when I was 19, I was like, oh, I'll just learn how to play all the bluegrass instruments. I'm still working on guitar.
See, man,
Yeah.
like that's why you're successful. Like that right there, that attitude of
Mhm.
I'm just going to learn how to do it. It doesn't matter what it takes. And bluegrass is there's such a rich history. There's so much to it. And after one fiddle tune, you haven't even scratched the surface. Like there's the
No.
history of bluegrass. There's, Irish folk music. There's the whole thing. Like you can go forever. And that's another thing about your channel that I really love, is that it's not just lessons with Marcel, like you just showing us how to play fiddle tunes. You actually take us through the history of bluegrass and why it is the way it is. What made you decide to go add that to the channel?
Actually I was doing a little bit of that very early on, and I stopped doing it because the videos that were like how to play Tony Rice Old Train, right? They did better. And so I stopped doing it. And one day, a guy named Mike lives in DC. He helps me with my website sometimes. He does like data entry.
Okay.
Mike was like, you should bring back the old Marcel. Mike was like, you should do more of those like video essay kind of videos that aren't necessarily guitar lessons, but they're that kind of thing. And so thanks, Mike, for that advice, because I
Yeah,
probably wouldn't have done that if he hadn't said it.
that's cool, man. And I mean, Marcel's, honestly, did you ever think that 50,000 people would be subscribing to your channel, and you would have to turn people down for lessons and like hire other people to work with you, and it be where
No.
it's at? It's crazy, man.
Yeah, the answer is no. I didn't think that. And you can find early videos too where I'm really excited, where I'm like, oh man, this video got 1,000 views. Thank you all so much for watching. And now that's not a big number anymore, right? But at the time I was just thrilled, right? I thought it was the greatest thing that so many people were interested. So no, I didn't expect that at all. And it shocks me that it's still growing so well and so many people are still interested. I think a fair amount of that is due to the rise of people like Billy Strings and Molly Tuttle, but
Yeah, I wanted to talk
happy.
to you about that too, because like we're in a bluegrass renaissance kind of at the moment.
We are.
I would say there's hundreds of new bands coming out, and the rise of Billy Strings and Sierra Hull and others. It's crazy what's going on. I want to get your take on that. Do you think that let me phrase this the right way. When we've spoken to like Billy or Billy Failing, the traditional bluegrass players, there seems to be kind of two camps in the traditional bluegrass and the newgrass world, and there can be beef between the two.
Oh yeah.
What's your take on all of that? Like, where do you stand?
Yeah, I got kind of caught in the middle of that when I made my video called why do some people hate Billy Strings? And maybe that title was a poor choice in retrospect. That got people fired up. But yeah, you're right. And I think that who actually says it really well is the IBMA, the International Bluegrass Music Association. They have this saying that I've heard a lot of their directors and employees say, that preserving bluegrass is one part of it, but you can preserve it and still let it evolve, right? They're two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a great mindset, right? Yeah, you keep the history alive, you keep the tradition alive, you tell the stories, you do all that stuff. And hell, there'll be bands out there that still play traditional bluegrass, but as well, the genre dies. Excuse me, the genre
Get it.
I can get it out.
There you go.
The genre dies if you don't let it evolve, right? If you don't keep making new choices, the genre just kaput. And you see that happen with genres that get really academic. When they take genres and they keep labeling them and bottling up ideas or concepts from the genre, and you put it on the shelf and you put it on the shelf. And that's kind of what happened to jazz music. Not that people aren't innovating in the jazz world or anything, but if you look at the history of jazz, the moment where it slows down, the moment we start teaching it in the schools.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We start bottling it up, right? And so if you bottle up bluegrass and you want to say this is the only real stuff, it has to be exactly like it was in 1945, it's a death sentence.
For sure. And you know what? To me, bluegrass is an now it's my turn. Bluegrass is an amalgamation of so many different things that evolved into what bluegrass is. To pigeonhole bluegrass and put it in a box like that is almost a disservice to the art form itself, in my opinion. I mean, but it's a disservice to the thing, because at its core, it, like you said, it's an art form, right? And any art form needs to continue to evolve. And to say that you're doing it wrong just because you're not doing it like whoever back in the day, I don't know if I agree with that. And what you said, like, let's keep telling the stories. Let's keep the tradition of the thing alive. And I think at its heart, the tradition is evolution through playing together and what comes out when we get together and pick.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And people always say this too, but it's worth repeating that Bill Monroe, the father of bluegrass, he didn't have an end goal in mind. He tried a bunch of different stuff in his band. He tried, like clawhammer banjo, he tried accordion, he tried this and that over and over again. And then eventually, the thing hit and he was like, oh, this is good. And that's the thing that we're trying to bottle up.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all the great shit is like that. Think about like the Grateful Dead started as a jug band, and then they plugged their shit in and they started playing electric, and they were playing blues, and then they hit on whatever they created became their thing. But this is what we were trying to do. Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, it's kind of, I was going to say, it's kind of like a backronym or something. It's like in hindsight,
Mhm.
you're being like, oh yeah, this is the thing we're always trying to do. When in reality, you had no idea what you were trying to do, right?
Well, I think that comes down to feeling. Like you didn't know you were trying to do that, but when you feel that feeling, there there's nothing to me like playing a fiddle tune and having it sync up with somebody else and hearing that music between the two of you start to happen, or five of you or whatever start to happen. There's nothing like that feeling. And even at 70 beats a minute with two people with guitars or whatever, it's exciting when you're learning.
Yeah.
It's really exciting. And for me, that was like the first taste of, oh shit, like this doesn't have to be um
Anxiety producing.
yeah, this can be fun. Oh my god. And that is part of what led me to you, was like, oh, this can be fun. It doesn't have to be all academic, and it doesn't have to be um something that's so monumental I can't ever do it. This is just, let's
Yeah.
just have fun and learn how to do this thing.
And one of the really fun things about playing and listening to bluegrass is seeing people fold new influences in there. You know, there's um bluegrass is such a melting pot of a genre that bluegrass can take it, right?
Yeah.
You can drop like a rock and roll lick in there, and you can drop a bebop lick in there, and it'll still be bluegrass. You can't do that with some other genres. If you're in your metal band and you try to drop the bebop lick, it's going to stick out.
Right. Yeah.
It's not going to work. And also on the other side, just to talk about how amazing bluegrass musicians are and the quality of the musicianship, because I think sometimes people forget, they think it's this country bumpkin thing, but they're really great musicians. If you took, you know, your jazz guitarist, your metal guitarist, your rock guitarist, if you took all these different guitarists and you put them in a bluegrass jam,
Mm.
they would struggle. But if you took a bluegrass guitarist and you put them in all the other jams, they would do pretty okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. There is something to be said for
Why do
what
you think that is, Marcel? Like or how can you explain that? For somebody who doesn't play, bluegrass and is just listening to this, because I'm very green. I just started playing the banjo in October, and I'm not an hour a day person at all, but I have like maybe a lesson once or twice a month and pick it up, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I am fine with that. But when you really start to deep dive into stuff, you really have to change how you think about things. And you have to kind of like Aaron was saying earlier, educate yourself on like the beginnings of it. So why do you think that is, that people that are trained that way can just, it's so easy for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, you know, because bluegrass is that melting pot. When you go to learn bluegrass, you have to be able to play some blues. You have to be able to shred a little bit, right?
Mhm.
And bluegrass comes out, you know, only 5 years before rock and roll. So if you listen to some early bluegrass guitar players, like some of the stuff that Don Reno did on guitar, it's just like rockabilly licks.
Mhm.
You know, like bluegrass guitar hadn't solidified into what it would be. So if if you're studious and you learn all those things, bluegrass, you know, as the umbrella term, it ends up teaching you about a bunch of other little genres. And, you know, similarly, jazz tunes have made it into the bluegrass lexicon, right? We play Beaumont Rag, we play Sweet Georgia Brown, we play Lady Be Good, or we play a fair amount of jazz tunes. So, yeah, the people who study bluegrass get pretty well rounded, right? Because they have to study all this different stuff. Um, I think some of the other genres that you look at, they come from slightly smaller pools. You know, bluegrass is an amalgamation of like 5 or 6 different things. It's not that those other genres aren't amalgamations of things. You know, several ingredients go into rock and roll, just not quite as many, I don't think.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I mean, I've even been practicing and I'm like, damn, this, if you slow this down, this sounds like classical music. Like,
Oh yeah, yeah, that too, yeah.
yeah. And so I could see how, like you said, it's this, they've taken pieces of all of this different stuff and put it together, and without meaning to, you're learning all of these different skills. So you take yourself and put yourself in another situation like that, and you have that technique or that skill set in your tool bag.
Yeah.
And that's very I mean, if you're somebody that wants to be a professional musician, think about how invaluable that is to be able to go out and just sit down with anybody and be able to play. Look at Billy Strings when he plugs in electric.
Yeah, right. You can do
it's
it too.
fucking amazing.
So, Marcel, what's your like template or maybe even advice for somebody who's brand new starting out, kind of like yourself, that, like, wow, this music, I never even gave it the time of day. Now I'm listening to it. I love it. I want to play it. What's your first thing to be like, all right, you need to do dot dot dot.
It's a good question. You
Well, I
need to
have a
get your
YouTube
ass
channel.
kicked.
Well, yeah, you're not going to teach a lesson, but like, where do you go? Where do you even
Yeah.
start?
Yeah, well, if you're getting into it, especially if you're a guitar player, let's say that, you should not worry about the equipment right away. I see a lot of new players that are like, oh, I got to get, like a Martin Dreadnought guitar. I got to get, the $50 guitar pick and the $100 capo and all that stuff. Don't worry about any of that. Instead, just start playing the tunes. And if you think about bluegrass as like a living language, the for instance, a fiddle tune like Red Haired Boy is from like the 1400s. It's an old piece of music, right? And so that means that we don't have a source recording. The first time it was written down was like 100 years later by some British guy. So there isn't like a direct source for a tune like that, which means when you start learning those tunes, you also have to start improvising with them immediately. Because if you start improvising, if you start playing with the tunes, you become part of the conversation. Because there is no source recording of Red Haired Boy, any
Right.
version of Red Haired Boy is valid.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
And
Yeah. So
go ahead.
a lot of times these fiddle tunes work in standard ways too. So I guess in short form, my answer is learn some fiddle tunes. But a lot of times they work out in four phrases, right? And that fourth phrase tends to be the one that gets improvised the most. For instance, if we took a bunch of bluegrass musicians and we asked them how Red Haired Boy goes, maybe we'd all kind of agree more or less on the first three phrases. But phrase four, you'll get 1,000 different answers if you poll 1,000 bluegrass musicians, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So you got
Wow.
to play that game, right? You got to be part of the conversation.
Well, and I've heard it said too, like exactly what you just said, learn fiddle tunes. Like I've talked to a bunch of people now about it, and I would say that is the standard answer that I'm getting as I'm taking my poll. Like you could do all the stuff, like learn your scales and learn your G runs and all that stuff, but you want to sit down and pick the fiddle tunes. And the other thing that I've heard said is try not to learn them from tab. Try and learn them by ear. And
Right, because
what's the reason?
yeah, right. So you become part of that oral tradition. I can give you an example if you want to hear.
Love to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's keep talking about Red Haired Boy because we're on a Red Haired Boy kick for whatever reason.
Okay.
So if you're me and you, we're buddies. It's the turn of the century. We're neighbors, but we live a mile away from each other, and we're sitting on your porch together. And I'm like, hey, let me teach you Red Haired Boy real quick, right?
Okay.
And what we're gonna do is we're gonna line it out. So I would teach you those four phrases in order. So the first phrase that I teach you would be phrase one, phrase two. Phrase three is the same as phrase one. Phrase four is the one that you get to have fun with. And what
Okay.
happens is we can't write anything down, right? You've just learned this tune by ear. I don't see you again for another 2 months. And what you remember is just the direction of the phrases, where the phrases end. Are they ascending? Are they descending? What kind of notes are in them?
Okay.
So when I come back, instead of playing, you're playing this. You're playing.
Okay.
Instead of phrase two being, you're going, right? You're improvising just because you don't remember so well.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the like valid thing here, right? This is what we're talking about. The tunes don't have one interpretation because the way that they're shared is just this, oral tradition of like, oh, it kind of goes like this, it kind of goes like that. And you keep passing it down and down and down. And it's this endless game of telephone. So yeah, when you learn the tune, maybe don't learn it from tab. Maybe figure it out yourself and come up with some variations, because then you're part of the conversation.
That's what I was just, you said it perfect. Like telephone, that's exactly what I was thinking while you were saying that. Cause the message is, you know, she goes to the store, and then it was, by the time you get it, she's at the store. She's been at the store. You know, like the store is part of the story, but it may be not
Yeah.
originally what it was. And that's really cool to be able to translate very loosely something that is so old that we will really never know if it's
Right.
yeah, right or
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
An arbitrary term in this context, right? It
Right.
really doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. Yeah.
It's
Right.
the ultimate long form game of musical telephone.
It is. Yeah, it really is.
Wow.
And also, let's put that into perspective. Red Haired Boy might be the oldest piece of music that you know.
Wow.
Wow. That's
Wow.
crazy.
Yeah.
And okay. So if
I
we're
can actually think of one older piece of music that you might know.
what's that?
Greensleeves.
Oh yeah. Yep. That was
Greensleeves is slightly older than Red Haired Boy, yeah.
so
I mean, we can just pause on that for a minute, because that isn't that how everything is in life. Think about the Bible. You know, that has been changed, and you know, New King James version and this version and this version. By the time it's gotten to 2023, how accurate do we really
Yeah.
think these stories are?
or fish covering sneaking Sally through the alley. Right? It's same thing.
Yeah.
It's our interpretation of what we've heard, taking that thing and making it our own. And that's the cool thing about bluegrass to me, is that there's such a, in other styles of music, like take pop music, it's the star, that's the thing, you know what I mean? But bluegrass is such a human thing. It's wood, wire, and people when you break it down to its base elements and connection. And that's fucking dope. You know what I mean? That's one of the coolest things ever. And I think this is just an opinion, but where we are at in the world and time right now, things are wild. Like the world is crazy. I was just watching your video about AI generating fiddle tunes, right?
Yeah.
Like that is even a conversation that we're having is wild all by itself. But in a world where that is a thing, and we're on screens all the time and television, all this stuff, we're so disconnected from each other. Anything that provides us the opportunity to connect with each other on a human level is essential. And I think that might be part of the reason that we're seeing a resurgence of this kind of music right now, is because people are hungry for that touch point.
Yeah, yeah. Not to, suck all the fun out of that statement.
Please
But
do.
what's also kind of interesting to me about that is that bluegrass is a fake idealism of how it used to was, right? Bluegrass is a Norman Rockwell painting of a guy in a rocking chair and there's a sleeping dog in the corner, right? Bluegrass isn't traditional music. maybe that's controversial. Bluegrass is a modern genre. It was invented in 1945.
Right.
Sure, it's got a bunch of influence from older genres like old time, things from before 1945 and American traditional fiddle tunes and everything. But bluegrass itself, all of the improvising and the super fast speeds and the particular lineup of the bands and all that stuff, it's brand new, right? So maybe that actually makes it even more magical that Bill Monroe was able to create something that feels so nostalgic, feels so important, and feels so traditional that people believe it.
Right.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. And
I mean, if you
That's
tell the
crazy.
story long enough, you do believe it. So if you play music the same way, you believe it. You believe that that's what's being said.
Yeah.
And people are repeating the story now over and over again and adding their pieces to it. So even if it wasn't something when it started, now it's become alive because people have touched it and started adding to it.
So
I have people that comment on my videos and they say, when I mention, the creation date of bluegrass is 1945, people will comment on the videos. They'll say bluegrass is way older. Bluegrass is older than the hills. People have been playing bluegrass in Appalachia since, they came over to the States. You don't know what you're talking about. It's funny to me because bluegrass is named after Bill Monroe and his Bluegrass Boys. People started calling the genre bluegrass in the mid 50s, right? It's that brand new.
Wow.
Right? But there's people in the comments that believe the myth so hard that they want to tell me that I'm wrong and bluegrass is so old. And it's not.
So what was it before that? Just traditional folk music?
Yeah, we generally call it old time if you're talking about like music from Appalachia. So
Okay.
if you're thinking about the old fiddle tunes and like the flat-footing
Uh-huh.
and all of that stuff, the umbrella is kind of old time. It could be slightly different stuff. It could be like Irish traditional music, or it could be maybe jug band music has a lot of improvised instruments. For instance, like spoons and washboards and stuff. That's more
Mhm.
jug band. But you have a lot of like seed genres that existed before that. But bluegrass is named after Bill Monroe's band, baby. Like that's later.
That's go
I
ahead.
want to get your idea on one of the things that Aaron just said about like, communication and like, like we've got these technology and we're starved for interaction, but you're doing something that is alleviating some of that starvation. You're creating a community and a place for people to come to really feel like they know you and teach them something, which really the only barrier is the screen. Otherwise, we would be together in the room. And so what's
True.
your thought on whatever it is, the closeness or the distance or just the change of how humanity is going through right now with like the screens and the phones and all of that?
Yeah, it's wild, and it's a double-edged sword. There's a lot of things that I don't like about it, but what it comes back to me, for my business, is that there's a lot of people that don't have access to good bluegrass education. I have a bunch of students in Australia or like in Eastern Europe. I have a student in China. I have students all over, and I'm sure I have viewers there too, right? And they would be so happy if they could get an in-person lesson, or if they could get, where they could go to a bluegrass jam in their area. But a lot of them can't. And this is kind of the platform that we do that through. So in that sense, I think that it's a benefit because, for instance, when I started learning bluegrass, I was, my family was living in the Northwest at the time. And I had a really hard time sort of finding the local bluegrass scene, and there weren't any guitar players that were there to kind of guide me. So, what did I do? I watched Banjo Ben, I watched whatever was out there to try to learn something. I slowed down recordings and everything. I would have been so stoked if there was Lessons with Marcel when I was learning. And we do that, for instance, with the Bluegrass Coalition. Is this group jam that we do where we take video submissions from all over the world, and then I edit them together so it's a seamless jam. It's as if we were all playing one after another.
That's so dope.
Yeah. And it kind of gives people that experience. I know it's not the same as jamming in person, but it's neat to see your break, sandwiched in between two others, and you're like, oh, I did the thing. I did a bluegrass jam, and these people are in Germany or something. They've never done it, right?
Yeah. And that, I mean, like we were saying earlier, bluegrass is about playing with other people. And that to me was the biggest barrier to entry, was playing in front of somebody else with them. And now it's your turn, it's your break, go for it. Like that's terrifying the first couple of times. And I'll be honest, man, I learned what I know from watching your video that was like your first bluegrass jam. This is what you do. Like now I
Yeah.
so that stuff is invaluable for people that don't have the resources around them. We're in the Northwest now too. Where are you at, Marcel?
Well, I'm in North Carolina now, but
Oh, okay.
at the time I was living in Bellingham,
Oh,
Washington.
yeah, we're in Portland, Oregon. Um,
Yeah.
I want to ask you about the podcast. Tell me about the podcast a little bit. I didn't know about this.
This is an insane thing.
Okay, cool.
Uh, I, I have this friend named Hayes, and Hayes has been helping with a lot of videos, whether he gets mentioned in the video or not. He's just, another buddy of mine that's a creator. He does YouTube and stuff.
Mhm.
Shout out to Hayes Griffin. And Yeah, we were joking about doing a podcast together, and we kind of landed on the name Podcast with Marcel because it keeps the branding consistent.
Right?
And so what I did, I pulled this big sort of prank on Hayes, which I do a lot. I did it in the AI video too.
Mhm.
I'm always throwing him under the bus, but I hired a voice actor, and I had him read a bunch of voice lines so I could make a soundboard, because the podcast is set in space.
What?
What? Okay.
Yeah. So I made a soundboard with a bunch of sound effects and a bunch of like transition stingers, and sort of this like Toyota-thon, gruff Southern voice is a character on the show, but I just trigger all of his voice lines. And yeah,
What?
Rad. And
it's
how
insane. Yeah.
is
And
this like
so
your idea or both your idea to do this kind of?
he didn't know anything about it. So we went to do the first podcast, and I was like, all right, man, just like go with me. And so you can watch him like figure it out live if you listen to the first episode.
Oh no.
What?
Okay, so what's the subject matter of the
Yeah,
podcast?
right. So the framing device is that there's this we're the intro sets all of this up too, but we're bluegrass astronauts, and we're normally fishing for hydrocarbon in the lakes of Saturn's moon Titan, but there's always time to get some picking in. So the episode starts with us on the street, and I'm like, hey, Hayes, I want to take you to this bar. Just don't embarrass me in front of the bartender. And the bartender, JD, is my voice actor whose lines I trigger.
Okay.
And so we go into the bar, and you get the sci-fi door opening sound effect and everything. Hayes has no idea what's going on. We order our drinks, we sit down, and then it's just like this. Then we talk about bluegrass, we do our thing. We might order more drinks or do whatever, right? But it's sort of a loose framing device. So at the beginning of every episode, we can have this like brief sci-fi experience, and then we sit down at a sci-fi bar and just talk about bluegrass.
I love
That's super
that.
creative, man.
Yeah.
And not that you didn't already have enough to do, right? You had to create something else like
Yeah,
that. I know how hard it is to put out content on a regular basis. It's tough, man.
that's
And
really tough.
and especially if I'm still working a day job, so it's double hard. Like I'm doing everything all the time.
Yeah.
And have you struggled with the growth of the channel over time?
Yeah, there's a learning curve to your channel getting so big. um Dude, one of the things that really helped me with my workflow, if you're ever in the opportunity, is to work in like 2 week sprints. We're getting corporate over here now.
Yeah, no, go for it, man.
Yeah, let's do it.
And so I'll teach private lessons for a week, and then the next week I'll use it to make content. So I'll film a video, film a bunch of shorts, or do the podcast, or make assets for whatever. And I just alternate back and forth. And for me, it keeps my life from being less crazy and less monotonous, right? Because
Right.
every week
Totally.
I'm like in a different mode. um I also learned with my YouTube channel that after a certain point in my growth, I don't remember the number, my channel performs better if I put out a video once every 2 weeks instead of every week. And so, yeah,
What do you
can't
think
explain it.
the you don't have any
Well,
idea why that would be? You think it's
well,
because
I
people are
post.
hungry?
I don't know what it is. I post shorts too, right? So like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, it's like video on Monday, and then, shorts Wednesday, Friday, and shorts for Monday, Friday of the next week.
Right.
Then the new video comes out. And so it's almost like you get this big experience of like, oh, a video drop, where's Marcel been? And then you get like the drip feed of the shorts. And I wonder if it just creates more excitement because the videos aren't so frequent, that people are like,
Mm.
oh, I got to watch this one, right? Marcel posted.
I
Maybe
mean, I
that's it.
think in everything, the element of surprise or waiting, especially now that we don't need to wait for shit. Like before, you
Yeah.
know, one season, it took an entire year to get through a season of like Friends because it didn't get dropped all the time. You had to wait. And then now you
I
can,
can finish that in 2 days.
Yeah,
right?
right.
And I think that maybe people love that idea that they can do that, but think about indigestion. If you get to eat all of your favorite foods right now, when the hell are you going to have time to digest them, and what quality of digestion is going to happen? And that happens with information too. Like, so I've got I deal with this with trying to learn the banjo. What the fuck else do I learn? There's so many things. Everything's a beginning thing. So now, okay, I'm trying to focus on, learning chords. Now this is the beginner for learning,
Rolls.
fiddle tunes and rolls. Like, it becomes so much
It's overwhelming.
It's so overwhelming, and I completely get indigestion from learning a new skill, or even something that I can be interested in. And I know I'm not alone in that. I know that that's a thing. Like, you can kind of devour so much, and then are you really using what you've devoured then? And so I feel as if, like, what you're doing, you're keeping yourself relevant through these shorts, but you're not giving away everything at once. You're like that once a week show that you still do have to wait for, but you got those cute little things in between. And what an ingenious way to give your audience something that maybe they didn't even know that they needed. A little reprise.
Let's roll back to your comment about learning, because I'm a teacher. That interests me. Have you ever heard about how kids learn and how adults learn? Do you know what the difference is there?
No.
Yeah. So kids are really interested in learning a task and then honing it. So, for instance, if I gave a kid a book full of guitar licks, they will learn the first lick and then just play it over and over and over again. They get really good at that first lick. If I give that lick to an adult, they'll read all of the licks, and then they'll get stressed about how they're going to memorize all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
That was this.
So that's kind of, yeah, right. That's kind of what you're describing. You get sucked down this rabbit hole, and you're like, let me watch all the YouTube videos about banjo, and then you don't actually learn that much. In fact, the kid who just practices one thing over and over again might get better faster.
Yeah.
Right? Just because they're focused.
I have an object lesson for that.
Okay.
So I was exactly that guy that you just said. Like,
I'm that person.
Get stressed about all that.
Yeah.
Mel got me lessons with Brian Sutton.
Oh yeah.
And I've been playing a while, so I understand the guitar. And like, the first thing he had you do was just doing eighth notes on the G string, right, in time with the metronome. And I'm like, come on, like, I could do that.
Yeah, listen, I'm a genius, Brian. Let me move on.
Yeah, right. I've done this shit.
This is for everybody else who's a beginner.
Right. And so I go to do it, and I'm like, holy shit, this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life. Like, I spent 2 weeks learning how to play this thing right. And I do the video submission back to him, and I get the comments back, and like, I'm doing everything wrong from the beginning. So I'm like, have to start over. And so just taking that one thing and learning how to do it right helped me so much, instead of trying to just barrel through all the lessons, just taking that one. So that's a perfect example of that. Just like, you know what? There's videos on rolls. Take one video and get really good at that forward roll that they're teaching you. You know what I mean? And then move on to the next thing.
Yeah, it's a really, like, you can put yourself in that mindset again, right? You can remember what it's like to be a little kid, and you're just like, all right, I'm going to do somersaults in the front yard for the next 5 hours.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have all these superfluous extra thoughts in your mind as a kid. You've got, like, I don't know how to do this. I want to learn it. And then you do it.
Right.
As an adult, you're like, I kind of know how to do it. Like, it's fine.
I saw him do it.
Yeah. Like, when really am I going to need to do a somersault again? So I'll just practice it a couple times, and I'm moving on to, like, whatever else.
Totally.
And definitely, like, teaching, I think that for me, I've had to unlearn more than I have learned. That's what I've learned. I didn't grow up with music. I didn't grow up around people playing music. So it was completely foreign to me. And then as you get older and your adult mind gets older, you start, I'll speak for myself, but I'm sure other adults out there can relate to this. But like, you get disappointed if you don't know what you're doing almost immediately. And so then it discourages you from going further.
I got something for that. So
Okay.
think about being a little kid. You wake up in the morning, you can't tie your own shoes. You go to like eat cereal, you can't pour your own milk. You like can't put your own jacket on. Can't even close the car door. You go to school, you fail over and over again. You go home, like you're just bad at everything all day, and you're totally content with that, right?
Yes, you are. You don't even know the difference. You're not.
And guess what?
Yeah.
You're like an adult, and you get good at stuff, and you just expect to be good at stuff all the time. You're like, well, I killed it when I tied my shoes this morning. I'm gonna pour the milk in my cereal, right? Like you just have success after success, right? So when you sit down and you try to practice your instrument, you're not, doing as well as you think you are. That's what's going on, right?
Yes.
You're not used to failing all the time. That's why kids learn so fast, man.
Because failing is not a big deal, or it's not even part of anything.
No,
They're just it's a part of the process.
You didn't know how to do it, and now and it doesn't matter. And I think too that going back to what you said, it's the difference between learning for fun and learning because you have to. Those are two very different mindsets to be in. And the learning for fun part, all of it's fun. Not knowing how to do it is fun. Like when I learned my first G run, like super slow, I was so stoked. You know what I mean? Like I didn't care. Holy shit, I just did that. So like learning for fun is, I guess you have to cultivate that mindset.
Well, it's an undoing of your adult brain to some degree. It really is. Like I got the banjo because I got completely inspired at Northwest String Summit by meeting Tom Neckville, who created Neckville Banjos. And we had this incredible conversation, and it just opened up my ears and my musical heart for the rest of the entire time that we were at Northwest String Summit. So I'm not like, oh yeah, I'm going to be part of, like some band and be like, I don't give a shit if I ever perform with anybody. I want to learn how to play that instrument, period. And it's not even about bluegrass or not bluegrass. I don't care about learning certain styles. I want to learn how to play that instrument. And so I have a different thought process behind my learning. And I'm also, because I'm not trying to accomplish something specific, I don't have a time frame, but I still have all of these hangups as an adult with learning. So even though I don't have like, oh, I'm not trying to learn this by the end of the year or this, I'm still dealing with unlearning my adult habits of that failure is somehow a negative thing instead of a stepping stone to where I eventually want to be. I'm still in my head about that. But I mean, every day, like even like this conversation and talking with my teacher and learning my first song, not with a roll, but picking it like one string at a time, like a little kid, like it's the best thing ever. And like playing and singing together, that was a whole thing. Like, so I'm learning I feel as if I'm like really learning instead of just trying to pick it up.
Yeah, that's great.
Huge.
That's it.
Yeah.
Marcel, it was the funniest shit ever, man. Like we're at Northwest String Summit, we're doing interviews with people, and Tom Neckville and the Oregon Bluegrass Association are there, and he's got this $5,000 like amazing,
well, probably more than $5,000. This was like tricked out
Saturn inlaid on the neck of the banjo.
Series.
Like this thing is fucking amazing. And I see her, like she puts the banjo on, and I see her fall in love, and I'm like, oh no.
Well, Marcel, you have to understand, like Thomas Neckville came over. First of all, we didn't know who he was. We had no idea who he was. And he was like, hey, what are you guys doing here? And we were like, oh yeah, we're a podcast. We're doing this, that, and the other. He's like, can I be on it? And we're like, what do you mean? Like, well, no, we already knew that we had people that we had to do. So we're like, who is this guy? Like, what? So then he starts to tell us who he is. And we're like, oh, hell yeah, come back. Well, he comes back. And his back is kind of toward us at first.
See, she remembers the moment.
I do remember it because when he turned around with this hot chick, like that's what it felt like the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. And he made it up. His hands created that. And I could not like, I couldn't think about anything else.
She's like, babe, I want to learn how to play the banjo and I want a neck fill. And I'm like,
I was like,
that's like, you don't know how to drive and you want a Ferrari.
well, it's like total 16-year-old moment. Like, I want a Ferrari and I don't even have my permit, you know, like,
yeah,
totally like that. But like, after that, like I said, I heard the banjo and everything after that. Like I was like awakening to some type of sound that I think that I've always loved, because my mom used to listen to country music when I was younger a lot, and I was exposed to a lot of different kinds of music, but my ear wasn't sharp. I didn't understand what I liked, you know. And that conversation with Tom at Summit opened up my ears to hear things that in a different way that I never could have put my finger on before. And so also, everybody's playing with everybody. You've got all these bands intermingling. You've got, you know, people that are not quote unquote musicians or that are getting paid for, but that are just picking up instruments and playing. And I was like, I would love to talk like that. Like, I would love to understand that kind of a language and talk like that. And so that's really where it got me, especially doing this, like talking to you, talking to other musicians that are touring. There's something left out because I'm not a musician, and I'm not saying that it's bad or good. I'm just saying I can't speak to something if I don't understand something.
Right.
And as the show got further along, like 6 years old now, I wanted to be able to speak more intelligently and more holistically, instead of just from a fan's perspective, which that's great too, but I wanted to understand more. And so it felt like the next progression of not only my adult learning, but like for the show and what we were doing for the scene. Because really, I feel like what we're doing for the scene is highlighting amazing people that are doing some creative, crafty, top of the line things. And that's what I feel like what we're doing is when we're interviewing yourself or Tom Neckville or whoever else, Billy Strings for that matter. Like, yes, we all know that these people are talented, but why? And who are they? And what little things can they teach us? And then they're like trapped in time so that you can go back and listen. And so it was a progression, you know, like I needed to feel like I was doing more as a host, as a fan, and as a musician, you know. And this is why it's like I feel like I'm fine with the notion of being a lifelong musician and a lifelong beginner. I'm fine with that. I'm okay with that. But like I said, I'm still wanting to kind of cut through some of that red tape that I've inadvertently put up as an adult in learning.
You know, listening to you talk, it makes me think about just how different all the experiences that we've talked about here are. Because it seems like your interest in music is really, you know, sort of like community oriented. You're like, man, I had this great experience and all the people are so wonderful and I want to have these conversations and like I want to be part of that.
Right.
Whereas you were talking and you were like, man, I just wish I was better.
Yeah.
You're like, man, I just want to be good.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm very motivated just by feeling like an underdog, right? You know, like I didn't go to school or I'm not from the South, or, you know, whatever it happens to be. I'm like, man, if I do win, like it's that much more of a win because I'm the underdog. That's what I really like, you know?
Well, you're killing it.
Well, look at that's rad that you mentioned that, Marcel, because look at, we're all the common thing here is learning. And everybody has such a different reason and a different way of that coming. So that's why you are so interesting to us personally, because you cover a lot of different learning styles and reasons for people that want to learn. And like I said in the beginning, like even your voice is part of the learning tool that you have. Like that is a part of it, as well as your knowledge, of course.
And it goes back to what you said too, Marcel, of like kids. And I think kids all have a different reason for wanting to learn too. And this is our just adult version of being kids. Like, I want to be good at that thing. And she's like, I want to play with them too. And you're like, I can beat those guys, you know, like it's
yes. I bet that's how we all would have been as children.
No shit, right?
Absolutely.
Yep, exactly like that. Marcel, tell everybody where they can get a hold of you and in touch and, you know, find you.
Yeah, the best place to find all of my things is on YouTube, Lessons with Marcel. You can also check out my website, lessonswithmarcel.com. The big thing that we're excited about right now is our workshop series.
Oh,
We're doing a
cool.
workshop every month, and there's only 25 seats. And we're keeping the prices real low. It's only $40 to attend, and they've been selling out like crazy. So if you want like sort of group instruction, no matter where you live on a bluegrass topic, you can find it every month at lessonswithmarcel.com.
How,
So
how can I ask how you do that with 40 people or 25 people? I'm sorry, you said $40, 25 people. Like, how do
Yeah.
you do that? Like physically?
Zoom?
Yeah, we do it through Zoom, and
Okay.
people can raise their hands and ask questions. It's very social. I mean, you can get 100 people in a Zoom call. We're not going to have a 100-person workshop. Like that wouldn't be any fun. We
Right.
found that like 25 is probably max.
Right
So
on.
is every workshop a different topic, or is it open?
It is. Yeah,
Okay.
and you know, my teachers that work for me, you know, when we talk about what the next workshop topic will be or who will teach it, I'm really just looking for things that the teachers are excited about.
Oh
So
shit.
that means that yeah, the lesson that you do get, whatever the topic is, it's something that the, you know, our teachers have maybe just discovered or have finally decided they can really teach, you know, like
Right.
whatever it is they're really jazzed about, and it's made all the workshops really fun.
Well,
That's awesome
yeah.
because when you're teaching from a place of passion, you're going to pass that passion on to the student and they're already wanting to be there. They pay their $40. They're already excited. So to be
Yeah.
able to pass that on, right on, Marcel. What you're doing some really awesome stuff in life and just congratulations
Yeah.
on
Thank
overcoming
you so much.
any small adversities and really like becoming the giant in this situation.
Yeah, man. And I want to say again, you had no idea you were doing it, but you know, it was a lonely slog through quarantine here working from home, man. And you kept me company a lot of days, and I really, really fucking appreciate it, brother. It meant a lot. And I've learned a lot from you. So I just appreciate it, man. And I appreciate you spending time with us today. And also I want to say too, if you want to, if you ever need us to promote anything for you, or you want us to shout anything out on the show, we're here for you, man. Just like send me an email, say the word, and I'll let our listeners know.
I love it. Thank you, man.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for spending
Thanks,
time with us today, Marcel.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. We'll see you around soon.
All right, brother. Take care,
Absolutely.
man.